Hey everyone, welcome back to another N600 maintenance video. In the last video, I redid all of the ignition system and installed an electronic ignition conversion. So if you didn't see that, check it out. In this video, I'm going to be rebuilding the carburetor and cleaning it up using this rebuild kit. And hopefully when it's all said and done, will run a lot better. I'll throw in a quick clip of it doing a cold start after the ignition work so you can see sort of a before state of how it's running. And then at the end of this video, I'll do another cold start with the fresh carburetor rebuild and see if it improves. Okay, I hooked back up the fuel pump just to show it hasn't been running. 68, 67 degrees. The first step is to remove the air filter and disconnect this, although I think it's pretty loose already. Yeah, so that's pretty well separated. And I'm going to loosen it from the engine side. I also need to disconnect the fuel line. I may remove this entirely in favor of just a simple clamp. And then I also need to disconnect this, some kind of solenoid. I'm also going to remove the whole airbox just because I don't know if there's enough room to wiggle this, and this is pretty old rubber and I don't want to end up damaging it. So I figure just it's safer to, quick and easy and safer to remove the airbox. Might as well do it. I don't need to take it completely out. I just needed to move it out of the way enough to be able to have room to get the carburetor out. And the last thing is going to be the throttle and choke cables. And I think I would have been better off just removing this whole plate rather than loosening this, because this has a slot in it and I have to get this nut off to be able to slide the cable out of that slot. Somehow this nut does come off, but it seems to be jammed up at the end, so it's not turning anymore. And I'm going to be putting it back on anyway, so I'm just going to remove this plate. And I think while this cable is off, I'm going to drip some oil down into the sleeve just to give it a little bit extra life if possible. At the very least, make it move a little bit easier. This may be a little overflow. Here it is, off the car. Now it's time to take it apart and clean it up. Here it is. Looks like there's either a final air filter or maybe a spark arrestor in here. Looks pretty dirty though, so I think cleaning that up will just be a huge help right off the bat. That's really not too bad. I I don't know if the O-ring is completely missing. Looks like it's in there actually. I guess it's pretty old, but the kit does come with a new one. Oh wow. Okay, I'm gonna have to find something that I can use to get these little baby cotter pins out. Unfortunately, the rebuild kit does not come with replacement cotter pins, and these are so small and old that I'm not sure how long they're gonna last. I might need to pick up some new ones. One of the legs broke off this one. Okay, so there was a little washer on both sides of this, as well as one on the outside of this bracket. So I need to remember that. So this, well, it's not very flexible anymore, but it's not torn. The spring seems to be okay, but fortunately there's a new one of these in the kit, so that will get replaced. Something is loose in here, and I'm not sure what that is. But I don't see anything else to remove, or any other screws or anything, except maybe this plug in the back, but I don't think I'm going to try to remove that. Guess I'm going to see what's under this. I'm not quite sure what that was in there for. And I don't know how to get this off. And I wish I could get this pin out so I could remove the float, because I do need to remove the float needle and replace it. And I don't know if that can be done while the float is in place. And then there is a gasket down here. So it looks like I was actually mistaken. this seems to be a replacement for this gasket, not this gasket. So this one is not included in this kit, although definitely needed. So I'm gonna have to figure out a way to figure out a new gasket for this. So now I'm going to put the carburetor into my ultrasonic cleaner, and a cool trick that I learned was if you put whatever you're trying to clean up in a plastic container, you can put that whole container in your ultrasonic cleaner, and then it will still clean within the container, and you don't actually have to make a mess of the liquid that you have in there. I just have regular water. So I'm just going to, well, I may need to get a bigger container. Usually these like fast food soup containers or takeout soup containers work really well, especially because they have the lid. But it's too small in this case, so I just had another water jug. I cut the bottom off, or the top off, and I'm going to be using this super heavy duty degreaser. I picked it up from Harbor Freight, and we'll see how well it works. And then I'm just gonna, this is a concentrate, so I don't know, it says it makes 200 gallons of general cleaner. I want it probably stronger than general cleaner, but not full strength, so I'm just gonna cut it with however much water is left in here. It's about halfway full, half strength. Might be good. All right, now it's time for the ultrasonic cleaner. And as you can see, my ultrasonic cleaner is just filled with water. And I accidentally figured out a really easy way to clean this out, because before I started using these containers, I would just put the stuff in and this would end up a big oily, greasy mess. And I never emptied it because I didn't know where to put it or what to do with it. It was just a hassle. But I accidentally left the heater on, and all of the water evaporated out and left just kind of a thin layer of grime at the bottom that I was able to wipe out with paper towels, and now it's clean. So if you have one of these and you need to clean it and you have a heater, maybe just leave it on and let the water evaporate off like you're making some kind of extra thick oil chili, and then it's easy to clean. So I'm just going to set this for the maximum time that it can run in one shot is 30 minutes, and just let that go and see how it looks when it's done. So this is done. I actually ran it for an hour total. So once the first 30 minutes ended, I ran it for another 30 minutes. And while I was waiting for this, I went and made a new gasket for that top piece that is not included in the kit. And if you haven't seen the review on that ultrasonic cleaner, I'll post a link in the description and check it out. It's another one of my videos. Well, right off the bat, this looks significantly cleaner. And it seems like anything that's left is just wiping out with a paper towel. The nice thing about using heat in the ultrasonic cleaner is that the parts come out, and it's obviously not too hot to handle, but it's hot enough that it ends up drying off pretty quick, because the residual heat just evaporates any of the remaining liquid. Yeah, look at all this old varnish that's just wiping right off. So I'm hoping now that everything is a bit looser that I can maybe get this pin out. It still doesn't want to budge. I also realized that there's a gasket in here, another gasket. So I guess that must have just been some necessary holes for machining the different channels and things. And then the solution that they came up with to be able to seal it off is just a gasket, which is good because I guess that allows you to open it up and clean it out as well. So let's check these other parts. It's really hot. This part turned out really clean. That looks much nicer than it did. As does this piece. And finally the bowl. Nice and clean. And whatever is in this piece is still rattling around, so it's either a problem that I can't get to or it's totally fine. And I think that was everything that I had. You can definitely see how much darker it is now. Just want to clean that spring up a little bit. And I'll dip this spring in there too. Again, just to get any loose grime off of it. It's already shinier. These springs are already so thin that I don't want to risk damaging them. And this is my new gasket that I laser cut, and that seems to fit pretty nicely. Perfect. So even though this kit didn't come with this, I went ahead and made one, and looks like that will work nicely. Okay, so not only did it come with a new float needle, but it came with a needle seat as well. But if I can't get this float off of here, I'm not going to be able to install either of them. And then this goes on the fuel bowl. These two gaskets have their obvious places. And the only things left in here I'm not sure about are this array of little O-rings. And it looks like there's a tiny little fuel filter that I'd like to figure out where that goes. Looks like one of those mud wasps was living in there. Although that's on the outside of the carb, so won't make that big a deal. I don't know if this is going to work, but I just got this pointed punch. I'm going to try to lightly punch out this little pin. I think that is going to work. So that came out. That means I can take the floats out of the way, and that means I can take the old needle out. And comparing that to the new one, it looks like it's in okay shape. I need to get something to take this out with. This probably isn't the best tool for this, but if it works. Oh yeah, no problem at all. So this is the old versus the new. They appear slightly different, but I think as long as it sits in there properly, it should be fine. Still don't know how this comes off, or if it's even supposed to come off. There we go. Just very gently. Okay, these have little O-rings on them. They at least used to. So those will need to get swapped out. This one looks pretty grimy, and actually can't tell if the housing is worn away or if it's cut that way. And then the other thing that I wasn't sure where it went was this little plug, which looks like it probably goes where that little plug is. Yep. Don't want to damage that. May not come out. Oh. I bet this little filter goes down there. Ugh. Wow. Sure does. Well, this thing's going to run a whole lot better. So I don't know where all of these O-rings go, but I know where at least 2 of them go, and I may leave it at that. I wonder if one goes in here. So I'm going to tighten this down just to see where it's set at. So that's half, 1, 1.5, 2, 2.5. So 2 and not quite 3/4. That looks like an O-ring. So there's another one. So that's 1, 2, 3, and I have 1, 2, 3, 4, 5. So there's no O-ring down there, but it'll be good to clean these out anyway. I almost wonder if there's an O-ring behind here, but I don't know if I'm going to worry about taking that out, just because it seems fine. And the choke seems fine. And with that, with all the extra pieces taken out, I think I'm going to put it in the bath one more time, just to make sure that all those ports, now that they are cleaned out, the ultrasonic, any grime that's in there will wiggle it loose and it has a place to flow out rather than getting stuck in there. So probably another 30 minutes. I don't think there's anything else that needs to go in there. Maybe I'll drop this in there just to clean it, along with these 3 screws. Alright, another 30 minutes in the soup. Got some fresh paper towels, and I also got a little bit of 000 steel wool that I'm just going to use to, for example, polish the needle. Because as clean as this can get, the better it'll run. I think that looks pretty good. And then I was also thinking maybe I could polish these up a little bit. Okay, my storage filled up, but I think I got it sorted now. So I'm going to keep polishing these different pieces. Not trying to get it perfect, just trying to get it better. Okay, now I fixed the storage issue. Now I can keep polishing these little parts. And again, I don't need them to be perfect. I just want them to be functionally clean. And I can also use the outside of everything a little bit. And this pin I want to clean. This is the float pin. It's because it was pretty tough to get out. Clean now. So now that this has gone through again, with those extra pieces removed, seems pretty clean. The outside looks nice. Everything seems to be moving freely. Alright, I'm going to blow this off with some air, and then we should be ready to start reassembly. Now it's all dry, and all the different ports and jets I blasted out with compressed air, so they should all be nice and clean and clear and ready to go. I do have a couple more pieces in here. Wow, this piece came out really nice. And I think there's a couple of screws in here. These screws came out really nice too. Now I need to try to remember how all of this goes back together. I know this goes in there, but first these need to be in place. Wouldn't recommend using starter fluid as a cleaner, but I want to make sure that these are nice and serviceable. I don't think that these are the same. Or are they? They actually have a little marking on them. A120. I guess they are the same. So these, I believe, go back in here. And just as a side note, probably wear gloves if you're going to use this super heavy degreaser and stick your hand in it, because look at how shiny my hand is. and it's dry. I will note that for next time for sure. Now I need a new version of this gasket. Oh, here it is. This goes in. I need to check how it came apart. Okay, so one of the really nice things about making a video doing something like this is you have the footage to go back and tell you if you got it right or not. So that goes in like that, and maybe I think this was the screw. So it's on there directly. Okay, so there's a little guide pin and then a corresponding slot, because this has holes in a particular orientation, so it needs to go back just the right way. And it's tricky because I need to get that needle to thread. There we go. So that's in place. However, I think this gasket needs to go in first. Then put that in. Then we have the spring. And I feel like there was something else under there. Let me double check the footage again. Nope, nothing else was under there. That takes 2 screws. And like everything else, just give them a quick clean. I'm also gonna clean off some of this white residue while I'm here. Alright, that looks pretty clean. Everything in here looks pretty clean. Alright, this is coming together nicely. I have this piece, which is the new version of this, which is where the needle goes. And first, here's the old filter, and here's the new filter. The new filter in place. Oh, I guess I can just put it on there. Have a little bit of Marvel mystery oil, and nobody knows how it works, but should give me just enough. Now there's this little retainer that needs a little bit of cleanup. That's going to hold that in place really nicely. Now the float, a bit of oil, just to help everything slip together. Alright, it's good, nice and free. This needs this little spring, and then this, yeah. Cool. Now this gasket needs to go in here. I'll flip it around and put it in the right way. And the only things left are these. And this looks like the new O-ring for this one, and for this one, it looks like it's going to be this little one down here. And then this one is just a plug, and also I'm not sure if this goes on this way or this way. I need to check the footage. Okay, it goes on this way, and just a touch of oil, and I think this plug should drop right in. So I think this is actually a retainer for these, and it just sits against the bottom of the fuel bowl and keeps those pressed in. So I shouldn't have to worry about those popping out. So now at this point I should be able to just drop this on. Last one for the fuel bowl, and then the last thing is the O-ring for this. This one doesn't want to come off. This is an awful blade, but okay, I got these little wire snippers, and I was able to get that off. I think this is the right O-ring for this spot, and I don't want to damage it. Let's try from this side. There we go. And then this needs the spring, and just drops in right there. And I think that it was 2 3/4 turns off the bottom. So that's the bottom. We'll do that. So that's half, 1, 1.5, 2, there. So that should be set. And now the last thing that needs to go back together is this little, I'm not sure what this is, but we have these 3 little washers and this pin, which I did not clean. And this washer. Well, fast forward to the next day. I wasn't able to find a cotter pin in the garage that would work in this tiny little hole. I thought about using a piece of mechanics wire and just kind of twisting it up, but I figured there had to be something out there that was a clean solution. And I found this at the local auto parts store. It's a Dorman random assortment of clips. And looking through the box, oops, useless packaging. I think this little baby hitch pin is going to work perfectly. And so there we go. So that was holding up the entire installation. And now that this carburetor is cleaned and rebuilt and new gaskets, let's throw this back on the car and see if it runs. All right, the first thing, I'm going to replace this with a simple clamp. I guess these clamps aren't quite small enough. So I'm going to have to use this again. I do need to replace this whole fuel line at some point. I have to reinstall this little solenoid on the side, and I think I found, yeah, I found one of the last O-rings, which means I only have one left that I don't know where it goes. Okay, that's installed. So I just put a little bit of oil in the straw. I flipped it over because the surface tension of the oil is not that of water. So water will stay in the end if you have your thumb over the back, but the oil apparently does not. And what I'm going to do to oil this cable is just use the straw to slowly guide the oil into the cable. And I think I spilled most of it into the paper towel, but that's fine. I don't think it needs that much, and I think that will keep things working nicely. Now I just need to put this cable assembly back together, and we should be ready to give it a start. Now I just need to tension this. And I think we're ready now to give it a start. So this is going to be now a test to start this engine with the new ignition system and now a rebuilt carburetor. Well, it runs really well now. It starts up incredibly well relative to how it was running. So I'm super pumped about that. I don't think I'm going to put this air box back on, and I think I'm probably going to do away with this preheat or whatever type functionality. There's nothing connected to this anyway. The only thing that I'll have to figure out is maybe like an oil catch can or somewhere to route this hose, or maybe I'll just put a little air filter on it, call it a day. But I'm excited to get it out on the road. It starts right up. It seems to run great. The idle needs a little bit of adjusting, and I'll get that sorted out with time. But I think this was definitely worth doing. The ignition was definitely worth doing. And I think I might have, I don't want to speak too soon, but I might have a street drivable car at this point. The problem that I was having is before I did the ignition work, it was running terrible. It would get around the block, but it would have low power, it would stall constantly. But after the ignition, it was driving a lot better. It was able to maintain speed. It felt like it had more power. But as I approached stoplights and traffic lights and that sort of stuff, it would still stall out. And so that's what really the problem that I'm trying to chase down at this point. And I think with just how quick and easy it started, I think it's going to run so much better. I'm going to have much less stalling issues. And just for a timeline reference, this car, I did not start this car since probably about 3 weeks ago. That was when I did the ignition work and went to the Cars and Coffee. So part of the inspiration for doing the carburetor is there's another Cars and Coffee coming up next weekend. But yeah, so this was sitting cold for 3 weeks. Obviously the fuel line was disconnected, so the fuel had drained out. Obviously the carburetor was rebuilt, so the fuel bowl was totally empty. And I let the fuel pump run for a little bit just to kind of prime everything. But it started up surprisingly fast, to the point where it startled me a little bit, and I had to turn off the key, or turn the key kind of sticks on the starter, so I had to like quickly turn it and get it off the starter. But yeah, I'm super pumped. Just like the ignition stuff, I'll link the carburetor kit in the description. I got it from the same place as I got the electronic ignition kit. Seemed to be a great kit with the exception of the missing gasket up here and the missing little cotter pin. Cotter pin wasn't really missing, but I just happened to break the one that I needed to remove, so I couldn't put it back. It was just brittle from old age. The gasket, I'm not sure if that should be available in the kit or if it's available elsewhere. If it's not available, if you can't find one and you need one, I can make them. So just leave a comment. Maybe I'll put a Etsy page up or something. But yeah, in the meantime, thanks so much for watching. Check the description for the links for the stuff that I used, including this sonic cleaner. Stay tuned for more cool stuff on this car. Comment with anything and like and subscribe. And thanks for watching, and I'll see you in the next one.